Thanks so much for joining me, John.
Glad to be here, Lawrence.
Brilliant. So just to kick things off, really. So in your mind, what does the current state of alignment between marketing, sales, and executives look like in the manufacturing industry?
Yeah, great question. So basically, in my experience, I feel like there isn't much alignment between marketing and sales and manufacturing. I think you tend to find, I think historically, manufacturing is sales-led. So you have a strong sales organization, and marketing is kind of generally just kind of like a tack on that's there to support the sales team, help make presentations for them and things like that. The problem with that is things have changed, and now more than ever, the world is moving away from face-to-face old school sales, and manufacturing is no different than anything else. Sales is moving more and more into the realm of digital, into the realm of social, into the realm of virtual. So that's where marketing really lives and where marketing is stronger than sales. So you have kind of a tension there with sales and marketing doing things in different ways and needing to learn skills from each other and kind of work together in more ways than they maybe had to in the past.
Okay, great. And I mean, your credentials kind of speak for themselves. You've got many years working as a marketing director. But what have you learned in your experience about growing a department, or almost like the importance of alignment whilst working in that role?
Yeah, so I think kind of the key takeaway, I think that I learned over time is that it's important that we have alignment, right? That we are working together, that we're cooperating, that we're not competing with each other, but that we're working towards the same goal. Because in reality, everybody in the entire company is working towards the same end. And so it's important that we work in our respective little departments together towards that same goal and not be separated from each other, not just stay focused, like so hyper focused on the one thing that we're doing. We're not paying attention to what everybody else is doing or what's going on in the company, and that we make that effort to come together and work together and be great in the individual roles that we each do. We each bring something different to the table. We have a different way of solving the problem and bring a different piece, but we really need to work together to bring all those pieces together with each other and take and really serve the customer like throughout the entire life cycle of the customer, not just focusing in on one area, but more than ever, these things overlap so much that we need to understand what each other are doing and how we play a part in the other departments around us, not just in this little task that we're doing that's straight in front of us.
Yeah, sure. And that almost that element of collaboration and working with other teams, it lends quite nicely into my next question, really. So how can marketing gain key insights from sales in terms of market intelligence and the voice of the customer?
Yeah, so there's kind of a couple ways that marketing and sales need to work together, and this is one of them. Marketing, I think, this is how marketing needs sales, as opposed to how sales needs marketing. What marketing gets from sales is that insight from the customer. So marketing is generally like a little bit more removed from the customer. Sales' job is being there with the customer, and they're constantly in contact with the customer. So hearing back from sales is super important for marketing. We can really learn loads and loads about what's the customer experiencing. Are they understanding what we're saying? Do they know what we're doing? Have they heard of this new product we launched? Do they get how it brings them a benefit? Are they when they're actually using the product, are they being disappointed? Do they feel like we told them something and the reality is something different? What needs does the market have that we're not meeting? What are competitors doing that we're not doing? What is all of that? You can get some of that from research on the internet and things like that. You can definitely get some of that from calling and talking to customers, which is super critically important for marketing to do. But you can get a load of it from just talking to sales. So, as a marketing guy, my first step in discovery, my first step in research is always go straight to the sales team. They already know the customers, they know the marketplace, they know where we're falling down, where we're strong. And yeah, that's a number one thing I think that marketing can get from sales is all of that information and experience they have in being out there in the trenches, talking to customers and dealing with competitors.
Sure. And how can marketing teams effectively lead and train the sales teams on messaging to ensure that unique selling propositions are communicated effectively?
So I think the first thing, and probably the most important thing, is listening better. What we just talked about, getting that voice of the customer from sales and listening to what sales is saying. I think you can come in as a marketing person and say, this is what we're doing. This is what we need to do. This will work. We have this idea. The boss's nephew has this awesome idea on how to do TikTok. Whatever it is that marketing brings and comes into sales's face and say, this is our great idea. None of that will ever be received if sales doesn't feel like you're listening to them. If sales doesn't feel like you're really sincerely trying to help them, or if you're off base or just like out in left field. So really the number one thing I think that you can do to be more effective with sales is listening to sales. Okay, actually hearing them, hearing the problems they're dealing with, and bringing things that address those actual things and not just coming in cold. The next best thing is listening to customers. So super critical, obviously, talking to customers. If you bring insights into sales from customers that sales doesn't have those insights, that's super powerful in getting them, in your ability to lead them, right? Getting them to leading somebody effectively. A lot of that is about trust, respect, those kind of things. So making sure they're listened to and that you're bringing in information and you're doing things that are in line with their experience and their expectation, or maybe even if you can get that step ahead. I know you're a little bit more removed from customers, but going out and talking to the customers and finding out what they're doing and hearing and saying and needing, and then bringing that into sales is a great way of helping lead them forward. And then taking all that info, okay, and producing something that makes things easier for sales is really what you're trying to do. So this is where you as a marketer, sales and your experience talking to customers creates a whole bunch of data points. And as a marketer, you bring that together and you say, okay, what we're hearing is that customers have this problem. And we know we have a solution over here that solves that problem. So we need to present this solution in a way that it's clear that it solves that problem. And here's one sentence that you can say that really accurately sums that up and captures it and is clearly understandable by a customer. And you give that messaging to a sales team, and now you're leading them. And now it's effective because you're taking real data, using your marketing muscle, and putting something in the hands or in the mouth of a salesperson that makes it easier for them, where they're not just struggling like, oh, well, yeah, they're great at the personal relationships. They're not always so great on how do I sum up in a one sentence or one paragraph or one idea exactly why this is better. And that's where you can come in and say, this is how you do it. But
that's great.
But you have to lay that groundwork first, that respect building groundwork,
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And also, in addition to almost like sales as well, there's a huge importance of having that almost like communication channels between marketing and the key stakeholders at the top of the company. So what processes can manufacturers put in place to facilitate those open communication channels between marketing and those key stakeholders?
Yeah, so I think, from the old fashioned to the modern, one, meetings, right? So you can, I'm not a fan of meetings, but getting, in the same room and talking about things and being deliberate like saying, here's our company objectives, here's our goals, here's what we're trying to do, here's what we're running into out in reality, and just sharing those things by being together is what you're doing. But there's a lot of ways that you can do that. They could be meetings, it could be technology like chats and emails and all that kind of stuff, obviously. And it can be things like a shared space, like a SharePoint on an internet, where you have the ability to put reports, or sales has the ability to put reports, or you create an interface in your CRM or ERP where sales and marketing have the ability to inform each other of different things, like this lead came in and it has this, he was looking at these things and he identified himself as interested in these product ranges, and that helps sales. And sales goes out and does a sales call and comes back with information and has a way of plugging that in where marketing can see it and say, okay, well, this is what they thought, or the competition is offering this, or whatever. So you could create a communal place, I guess, using technology in any one of a million different ways, from something as dumb as a spreadsheet to something as sophisticated as your CRM, where you can share that kind of data, both marketing insights and sales insights, on that customer record through that whole customer journey, and really kind of like collaborate on what is that customer going through and how can we address that. So it can be, you got that whole range of spectrum from, yeah, we talk about these things, which is important, have regular meetings about these things, integrate marketing into our sales meetings, integrate marketing into our account-based targeting, down to something technical like, CRM systems and internets and intranets and things like that where we help share information about customers, what they're going through, and how we're solving their problems.
And business, or the world of business, it doesn't stand still. It's always changing, as we all know. So
yeah, for sure.
In terms of corporate changes, new market opportunities and potential acquisitions, how can a marketing team stay proactive and aligned with executive decision making to maintain a cohesive approach to their positioning?
Yeah. So I think an important thing to understand is, anytime any department, in this case the marketing department, is interfacing with any other department, it's like in marketing we talk all about positioning and understanding the customer and what's in it for me, for the customer, keeping it simple. We have all these acronyms that have been around for a million years to convey this idea of, it's important for us to understand where they're coming from and present what we're presenting in terms that they understand. Okay, that is marketing kind of in a nutshell. But not only are we doing that for customers, we have to do that for all these different departments. So we've talked a little about the sales department. In this kind of question, you're talking more about the executive team. So you're doing the same kind of thing that you do all the time in marketing in these circumstances, which is understand the person on the other side of the conversation, the executive. What are their goals? What are their strategies? What do they really care about? What metrics do they care about? What do they need to know? And what needle are they trying to move? And, with acquisitions or with anything that the executive team is doing, you wouldn't bring the same information to them as you might to sales, or you would internally to your own team members. You understand where they're coming from, and you try to bring that information that directly relates to where they're at. And that might mean you need to boil things down in super basic terms and get straight to bottom lines and talk about figures or numbers or reports that really matter, like how many people downloaded the last white paper, isn't really generally where most executives are at. It's more like, our competition is selling this and we don't have an answer for this, and our customers are coming to us and saying, how do we fix that problem? And this is affecting 30% of our customers, and if we had a solution for this, we might get 50% more sales, or might be able to sell the same customers 10% more revenue from these products or whatever it is. That's what executives are thinking about when they're solving these kind of issues or the problems that are before them. So I think it's like, the facilitation and the communication is the same, whoever you're talking to, but the thing that's different really is understanding that specific person's goals and how you fit into their world instead of trying to fit them into your world, because it really doesn't work that way, whether it's a customer, a salesperson, or an executive who's working on some sort of acquisition.
Yeah, sure. It's kind of you've kind of covered what I was going to ask you next, to be honest. I was just going to touch upon almost like how almost like best practices really that marketers should follow to effectively communicate like insights, analytics, and results and stuff to executives. But I guess that you kind of and if you want to add anything else, then by all means, go for it. But am I right in just thinking it's almost the key message really is just to tailor your feedback and make sure you're giving those executives what they really need to work with?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And what they're interested in, risks, opportunities, value, things like that. Really kind of like the high level things generally are what executives are interested in versus the rest of us who are like in some silo or on the ground dealing with day-to-day wins and losses.
Sure. Brilliant. And obviously we're operating and living in a world really out, not just in business, but our everyday lives where technology plays such a massive part. But what role does technology play, or can technology play, in aligning marketing, sales, and executive teams, especially in creating systems that facilitate almost like seamless collaboration and information sharing?
Yeah, I think they play a critical role, like a very central and critical role. And hopefully, that's the way everything is going. If your business isn't already ready for that then, and many manufacturers aren't, especially the smaller ones, are just like embarking on this journey. But it's important that you start working towards that, because there's a big shift that's going on in business in general, but it is going to and is already affecting manufacturing and industrial businesses, which is the customer experience, the improvement of the overall customer experience. And that requires a knowledge of the overall customer experience. And you can't have that unless you have some sort of overarching technology or some sort of overarching processes and systems that enable you to share information across the whole organization and think strategically at the highest levels, which any executive would want. When you have a small company, you can do that by just talking to the different people in the company who are maybe like up the hallway from you on a regular basis. But as your company grows and as things shift from more personal to less personal, which everything is shifting that way in terms of sales and the way business is done, then you can't do it the old ways anymore. You need that technology in order to facilitate the sharing of information and the doing of business. It's just like, it's the exact same problem as it used to be that we sold things door to door as salesmen, and now everybody sells things on websites on the internet and nobody ever actually meets each other. That same problem is happening, or that same transformation, it's not a problem, is happening organizationally and across businesses as a whole. So yeah, the technology piece is critically important because it becomes that central piece through which you share all your insights, problems, and challenges, whether it's what we're doing right now and having a call and talking about these things, or whether it's knocking out to-dos or building out a process of change, or sharing information in a database in a CRM. It is critical now, and it's not going to become less critical over time. So this is something that small manufacturers need to find a way to do what works, what they're able to do to make sure they're on this journey themselves, a digital transformation process. And then larger ones, you're already struggling with it. You're already wrestling with it. What you need to keep in mind is that there's no end to it. So, I would I know sometimes it doesn't feel happy to have to deal with these transformations, but as you know, in any process, even manufacturing, you're constantly doing for instance, a continual quality improvement process in your manufacturing processes. This is the same thing in your technology and in your communications and in your data processes. So yeah, it's critical, and you need to get on the bandwagon, and you can't ever get off. So you need to think of long term, how are we going to do this? Not be too focused on what's right now, but be focused on how you're gonna get to where you need to be.
Yeah, sure. And we've touched upon almost like the alignment between sales and executives, but excuse me. And how can marketing collaborate with the operations side of the business to streamline processes and ensure that the right insights are being shared across all departments?
Yeah, so I feel like this marketing operations collaboration is kind of like the forgotten child. But I think it's important. I think a lot of people immediately think sales and marketing collaboration because those two go hand in hand. But what I was just talking about owning the entire customer experience is more than sales, right? Like the customer experience doesn't end at sales. It's actually just starting at sales. So there's that huge component of operations and all the follow-up things that are sales follow-up, post-sales. All of that is a huge part of customer experience. So I think one of the things that I'm seeing a lot now, right now, out in the industrial space, is there is confusion, or there is no one who owns customer experience. Okay, and there is increasingly this move towards what you might call RevOps, like a revenue operations mindset, which means it's somebody inside the company who's looking at the entire customer experience and all those touch points and all the technology and all the systems and all the processes that really create a seamless solution for the customer. And that struggle is real. There's no simple answer to it. But it's important to look at that and say, actually, it is important. And oftentimes it does start in marketing, because marketing is talking to the customer through the website, through collateral. The website also is one of those places the customer comes back and says, I want to know where my product is. Like, has it shipped yet? Do you send the whole order? Did you send like 1/3 of the order? Where's the rest of the order? When is it coming? A lot of times they more and more want that information from an electronic source. They don't want to call customer service when there's a mistake. When operations produces something, sends the wrong thing, sends a partial order, all of that, they come back to the website again to interact with operations. So because of that kind of central role of the website, and marketing's oftentimes ownership of the website, marketing and operations have to be in communication and have links and systems in order to be able to help speak to those kind of things with customers. So, and then it's important for, I think, marketing to understand from the operations side, what is a customer buying? How often are they buying it? Is there patterns in what they're buying? What are we doing special for these customers? So that's where, I guess, on the operations side is where you get a huge chunk of the customer experience. And that's important for marketing, because we can use that data too, just like we use the sales data when we're approaching a customer post-sale and saying, okay, well, you ordered an X. Do you also want Y? Like, people who buy X usually need Y about 3 months after they buy X. So you might be needing this now. Or, I saw that you bought X before and now you're not buying it. Is there a reason why you're not buying it? So I think that's where understanding that whole part of the customer relationship after the initial sale is where operations and marketing need to be on the same page and talking to each other and helping each other out. learning from each other and really just making sure that that customer experience from the beginning to the end, if there is an end, really from the beginning to the next beginning, is a good experience, and a thoughtful and organized and engineered experience, and not just a haphazard mess of being handed from department to department, with one department telling me something and the other department unable to keep the promises, which is such often an experience. Something is published on a website, they call, nobody knows anything about it. They talk to a sales guy, he sells them something else, the operations can't deliver it. The whole thing is a mess, right? So that's where we all need to be on one page and make sure the customer is having a good experience. Because in the end, if they don't, they're going to go somewhere where they have a good experience instead.
Yeah, sure. It's certainly the North Star, isn't it? Really, that alignment between marketing, sales, and executives. But
it's important.
Yeah, 100%. But it's one of those, isn't it? That, we don't obviously live in a perfect world. We don't operate in, business doesn't work seamlessly. Then it's full of challenges. So
it is.
What sort of challenges have you encountered whilst trying to integrate these departments, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is everybody just has their head down. And that manifests in a lot of different ways in a lot of different departments, but nobody wants to think big. They want to think small. They want to focus and not think big. I guess in a nutshell, that's the biggest problem. So the result of that, though, is they're not really thinking about the customer. They're thinking about themselves. So you think you're thinking about the customer when you're really trying to focus on just what you're doing and doing it well, but you're not. You're thinking about yourself. You're thinking about how can I do what I'm trying to do really well and achieve my goals, because the bigger picture of what the customer actually needs is bigger than you. But everybody has that kind of mindset of, this isn't my department, it's not my problem, this is above my pay grade, kick that problem down to the next person in line. So I think most of the challenges that we face are human. I think most of the challenges we face are leadership, cultural, human challenges. There's tons of software out there. There's tons of systems out there. There's no reason why we can't do things the way they need to be done. The reason we don't is because we're not thinking the right way. So, I don't think there's some magic software or some magic tool that we're lacking, and that like all of a sudden it's going to come along and make everything better. Really, what we need to do is train ourselves and train each other to think differently and to think from the holistic customer perspective. So anytime, like in my personal experience, when we've overcome a problem like all these things that we're talking about here, it's been through that. It's been just through saying, look, we're on the same team and we need to work together, because it's kind of like a fire bucket brigade, where you're passing the bucket down from guy to guy to guy, and it's full of water. And by the time it gets to the last guy, it's empty, because you're all spilling one drop along the way. We just need to be more thoughtful of the whole process and more careful, and realize that our job isn't just to get the bucket from this hand to this hand as fast as possible. We need to actually care about that customer and preserve that whole customer, and make sure the next guy gets everything that I got, that nothing is lost on the way from me to you. But we don't think like that. Everybody is like cut and dry in their own little silo, right? So I think the best way to overcome that is just through thinking, through communicating, and through, a lot of times, unfortunately, depends on top down, understanding and ownership of that these problems can't be beaten from within a silo. What you can do if you're a person and you're in that situation and you're like, my peers aren't on the same page as me, but I'm understanding that this customer experience needs to change and things need to change organizationally. I think your only course of action is to go upwards to higher level executives and try to get them on board with that change. Eventually they will get on board with it, especially if you can bring analytics that support your case. Like, this is how we're losing sales and revenue and making customers unhappy because of this problem. Once you can get an executive, and in small manufacturing, that means usually the CEO themselves, to be on board with changing this and having a unified approach to customer experience, and that it is important. It's not just engineering that's important. It's not just, sales that's important, but marketing and operations and all of these things need to work together. Then they can actually help institute change organizationally, because what it really takes to solve the problem is good leadership.
Yeah, spot on. And in terms of, you've kind of touched on it very briefly there, the whole analytical approach, and almost like the tools, there are plenty of tools out there and tools that can give you the data to make data-driven decision making, or to make data-driven decisions. But I guess it's at the same time, you need to strike a balance. How can you almost like get the happy medium between making decisions purely driven by data, but also balancing that with like a human-centric approach to understanding like your customers' needs and preferences?
Yeah. So one thing I think you can do is use data to inform and not dictate, right? So you use data to help you see things, but don't let it drive. I think there can be a tendency to overcorrect based on data, right? So you get some alarming new data and you just overcorrect without thinking about it. So it's important to use it to see, to identify trends, to understand customers, to identify problems, but it's not like necessarily 100% true, because you can kind of see anything you want in data. And if you've looked at data long enough, if you're a data person and you've looked at it long enough and you've wrestled with it enough, you know that you can see whatever you want and you can make it say whatever you want. So I think it's important to let it inform you and let it be your eyes, but not let it drive and be your brain. And then on top of that, besides what you would typically call data, which would be like quantitative data, like how many people bought this product within 30 days, you need to get qualitative type data, which is a little more touchy-feely and a little more harder to analyze, but it is oftentimes actually more important data. So this is where, we can see on the graph all the things we're tracking in the ERP, sales is going down or whatever is going up, but you can't get that qualitative data without actually just like talking to people. It doesn't fit into a little box. It doesn't fit into a column. It requires you talking to somebody and saying, help me understand the situation that's going on here. Like, is the reason the numbers are going this way, is it really what it looks like it is? Because it might not be. Sometimes you see two numbers and they're trending the same way and you want to say, okay, there's the cause. This number is going down and it's causing that number to go down. But that's not necessarily true, because if that was true, if I made my pants longer, I'd get taller. But I don't get taller when my pants are longer, right? My leg pant length doesn't inform my actual height. So sometimes we approach data like that's how it is, but we really need to understand the bigger picture, and that's where the qualitative data really comes in, and that comes from relationships again. So again, you're coming back to the human element. It's important that we have the technology tools, and it's important we use the technology tools and implement them, but what you're trying to do with them is have human insights foster human relationships, be more human as a company. All of these things require the human element. So just again, going back to the humans in the room, the customers, each other, all of that, and putting systems in place, yes, but not then forgetting the people that we use, that we put the system in place to help us to stay in contact with, So I think those are some steps that you can do to kind of like have technology, but also be human.
Yeah, sure. And, we kind of touched on it again, very briefly earlier in the episode. But, business, it doesn't change. It's always evolving. So looking ahead, what kind of trends or innovations do you think could impact the alignment between, marketing, sales, and executives? And how can organizations prepare for these changes?
So two things that apply, I think, specifically to marketing and sales. One would be just the importance of customer experience, like we have talked about, how the customer is expecting more. So today, in the age of Amazon, the customer is expecting everybody to be as sophisticated as Amazon. So they want sophisticated experiences. They want to know in great detail the status of their orders, their history of their orders, any questions that they have. Like by the time somebody actually contacts you, they're already 60% through the buyer's journey. So it's also data, decision-making data that they're going to need before they even become a customer. So that whole customer journey from like way before they ever even talk to you, all the way through figuring out what they want to buy and buy it, which they want to do without you, okay, to buying it and getting information on where the order is and all of that, which they kind of also want to do without you. So they want all of this online kind of customer experience, and they want you still to treat them like a human being that matters, right? So that's one area. The other area, I think, is in the change of sales from the traditional way sales is done to the way sales is done in a world where everybody is digitally driven. So sales has had a massive upheaval, and then it was already in the midst of a massive upheaval, and then COVID happened a number of years ago and kind of really just shoved it off a cliff, and it all of a sudden everything is completely different in the world of sales. So not only do you have this scenario of people doing 60% of the buyer's journey without ever talking to anyone, but then when they do want to connect with people, more and more, that generation that wanted to connect on the golf course is retiring. That generation that wanted to shake hands and have somebody bring them a box of donuts, they're retiring. And the generation that's replacing them is a generation that watches TikTok videos and YouTubes. And they're very active on social. So there is a sales transformation that's also super important, that is happening right now. I mean, it's already happening. So you need to somehow get all that subject matter expertise, all that engineering expertise. You need to find ways to make human connections online. You need to find ways to answer questions in the social space, to be seen as a leader in the social space. So I think those are two trends that have already started. The importance of customer experience and the digitalization of the entire customer journey, and you needing to be totally on board with all of that, with your organization, your technology, and your approach to market, and the importance of getting your humans out into the social space where they can interact with people in that 60% zone before they've ever reached out for sales. You need to be out there proactively in that space as a sales and marketing team more than ever before. Those are the two trends.
That sounds great. And I mean, it's been, the time's flown by, John, to be honest. It's been such a great conversation.
Yeah, good talking with you.
By no means least, just going to ask you to kind of wrap things up, the same thing that I ask every guest. What's almost like the one golden tip that you'd like listeners to take away from this episode?
I think we've covered it. a couple different times it's come up, and I think it's the thread that has kind of gone through this whole conversation, which is that we need to be together as a team. Okay, the company needs to work like a team. So we need to be where we need to implement technology, but be more human. Okay, so that has to happen together as a team. The company needs to be more in touch, not less in touch, more technologically engaged and more in touch. You can't like swap one out for the other. You have to keep the in touch and bring the technology and not then lose the touch. That has to happen both internally as a team. So we need to be a tight team. We need to know each other and know what each other is trying to do, know our goals, understand each other. And we need to be that way for the customer and the customer experience as well. So it kind of is a false dichotomy, I guess, like a sense of like technology is making us less human, and we want to be more human. We actually need to use the technology and be more human at the same time. I think, the more we're able to do that, not to run from one to the other or back and forth, but to embrace both without forgetting the other, then the better our organizations will be. To understand that people do want a personalized, tailored human shopping experience, all without ever talking to a human. That seems like a contradiction. It is in a way a contradiction, but it's also not. They're human beings and they're buying from other human beings. So we need to use the technology, but not become robots, I guess.
Brilliant. John, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Lawrence. Great to meet you, and thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you.